Hey folks, I think I got this working. I'm not the best with technology. I spend too much time reading books and looking at plants and stuff. So it takes me a while to figure out things such as streaming. Once I get it hooked, when figure it all out in the techniques, we'll have that mastered. So sorry if there was a little delay, but glad to have some of you here. And I'm sure we'll have some more combo lords trickle by as the time goes on. I decided to do this stream in front of a wall on the side of my combo classroom. You may be more familiar with that view, but here I'm starting to write some equations like I promised some fans long ago. Still catching up on some of the classic equations. So if anyone has any favorite equations they want to see on the wall, comment your favorite equation and I'll make sure it gets on there. May already be on there, may not. Try and surprise me with an equation, and if I like it, which I probably will, I will stick it on the wall. I don't have a Sharpie right here, but I think dry erase should stick good enough for now. Also got a big old whiteboard right here if we need to do any mathematics. Although part of why I'm streaming today is just to share a couple stories because I have a lot of interesting things in my life occasionally that don't make it into educational videos, may make it into a memoir someday, but why not share it with some of you guys for the time being? Right now, some of the nice things going on in my life, to stay in present tense for a moment, are my garden, which has some real nice flowers and fruits and edible things like fruit. And it's not a garden that I solely have. My family shares the garden with two other houses that are rented out to random people at different times. But sharing a large garden may be better than owning your own small garden. Works out well because we often have something or another ripe in the summer or fall months. And if any comments guess the fruit that I picked from there recently, I'll bring it out from behind the camera and show you an example of one of the fruits that was currently ripe that I picked. So any guesses, leave them in the comments. Now, in the yard, another great thing is having some cats around as usual. And pear is a great guess in the comments. Pear is close. I almost picked a pear as well. That would have been the second fruit. I have some that taste a lot like those pears that some call apple pears or some call Asian pears, or they have a variety of names. The pears with a different sort of sweet inside. There's a pear tree in my yard that might be related to that because when it gets skinned, the skin tastes different than that. Tastes not even the best, kind of like a mealy pear, but the inside's magnificent. That different sort of sweetness you get with some of them. Plum is another good guess. We actually had a tall plum tree back in the day, and it would some years make plums and other years not. And it's still there. And it hasn't made plums in a few years, but I'm holding on hope because occasionally it was like every couple years it would come true and blossom and make some plums. So maybe someday the plums will return. For now, plums are not in the fruit salads I can make from my own garden. Fig. And we got the answer on the third guess in the comments. Shout out to H Whip for the guess. And we got a fig right here. Now, the fig tree is pretty awesome. Figs can be an acquired taste because when you bite into them, they can be really sweet and a little bit tropical and have their own kind of distinct, hard to explain flavor. So, not everyone likes them. I've grown to love them, although a little goes a long way. Like, you don't need more than one or two figs in a little period because these things are sweet and pack a punch, but they are delicious. Now, one fun fact about figs that I haven't researched quite enough to have made a video about yet. So, this is more of just something that I've heard, more of a question than an answer that I will research enough to make a video at some point. Is that some types of fig are pollinated by wasps in such a way that a wasp dies in the small growing fig and actually is digested by the fig itself as it grows and used like compost or fertilizer for the fig to expand. And there's basically a wasp, or what was once a wasp. You won't taste an exoskeleton or anything. A wasp that was turned into the pulp or the soil inside this fig that let it grow to have all the real fig around it. So you're kind of secretly eating what once was a wasp in some types of fig. I don't know if this is the type of fig that does that or not, but it is somewhat common with some types. Someone says they found an empty wasp nest. Oh boy, I guess I'll have to tell you guys my wasp story in a minute. Shark Pool, feel free to comment if you have any facts about the empty wasp nest, but my recommendation is be very careful about being sure it's empty before you mess with it. Uh, a little wasp story before I bite into the inside of this fig is back in the day when I was probably about 17, maybe is my guess, 16 to 18. Shark Pool in the comments says they took it home and there's no eggs. I hope so. That's pretty cool. I bet that makes a cool picture. Um, and another fun fact by Shark Pool has never been stung by a wasp, which is cool. I've never been stung much by bees. I'll get to wasps in a second. Now, bees, one time when I was super young, I kneeled on a bee at the beach and it stung my knee because I accidentally crushed it when I didn't notice it and kneeled on it. I'm blaming that on myself. Wasn't that bad. Now, if you're allergic to them, you have to be really careful, but I don't think I'm allergic to them. If you're not allergic to them, not that bad. Now, apart from getting that little bee knee sting when I was super young, I managed to avoid bees for a long time. And still, the bees in my yard I love. And some people get scared when a honeybee or even a bumblebee flies by. And I'm like, nah, they're chill. Come on, they're not going to sting you unless you do something really weird to them. And I've walked around barefoot without even looking, and they just dodge my feet. The super chill, the bees. Wasps do pollinate. So they are helpful. There are some myths about wasps only being bad. Now, a lot of types of wasps do pollinate, and they are helpful sometimes. However, they are not nearly as chill as bees. Combo class is a pro bee, neutral on wasp. Now, before I answer any more comments, I'm going to tell this quick wasp story. Apart from my bee knee sting, which was minuscule back in the day, the only other time where I've had a bee or wasp sting was when I was somewhere about 16 to 18, I'm guessing 17. And me and two of my friends, after school one day, possibly while school was still going on, I was a little bit reckless those years, decided to go off to a trail not too far from where I live in Berkeley called Claremont Canyon. And it's above some college campus, not the main UC college campus of Berkeley, but another smaller campus called Clark Kerr. Above there, there's some cool nature. I love it. I've hiked there many times. Well, this was one of the times me and my friends decided to hike there, and we were kind of just wandering around on the side of the trail. It was big hills with some grass and shrubs on one side of it, a less foresty part, and we were just off the trail, just going on and off these hills. And we sat down on a log for a while. And I'm not going to give you all the details, but we were little teenage boys and partied a little bit. And after some things, we walked down this big hill, taking a little hike down this hill. And we stopped occasionally as we were chatting, bumbling down this hill, off trail, chatting. And as we were stopped for a moment, I looked by my friend's foot and I noticed something weird coming out of the ground. It looked almost like a little reverse tornado forming. It was like a few items were going up in a cyclone, but forming a cyclone from upward. And I realized that these few items that were cycloning upward were wasps. And at the moment, I just processed bees in my head. So I yelled, bees, even though it would have been more scientifically accurate if I had yelled wasps. You know, I was just in a state of panic. So all I was able to do was yell bees. And then I had this animalistic instinct kick in as more bees came out, and my friends and I took off running. And I remember just having only one thought in my head, which is just like, keep running, keep running, keep running. Like almost like I was a video game character or something with just a singular task, get as far away from that nest as possible. Somewhere in the back of my head must have known if I get enough distance, they'll probably leave me alone because they're protecting the hive is why they get aggressive. But as I'm running and not thinking that, just trying to run, 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 I feel them like pecking at the back of me, and they're faster than me at running. And so, well, they're faster at flying than I am at either flying or running. And so they're pecking the back of my head and arms and stuff. And I remember my friend had one like land on his arm, and as he's running, he said, he told me this after, he's just like looking at the one on his arm, like, get off, get off. But I just felt them mostly pecking at me. And one of them got caught in my hair, and I was like trying to tweakily get it out. And somehow, in that mess of just running from feeling these bees pecking at the back of us, I only got one stung. And I still had some panic attacks over, like, am I allergic? We're in the middle of nowhere. There's a bad time to test if it's allergic. But we weren't that much in the middle of nowhere, and we were able to, in not that long, hike our way far enough that the bees or wasps left us alone at some point. I didn't have to try going in a river with a snorkel or covering myself in mud or anything. So I managed to escape them. I know they were just protecting their territory, but it has left a slightly, in a way I laugh about, a sour taste in my mouth comparing wasps to bees, which is why combo class is pro bee and neutral on wasp. And now let me read through some comments. Um, let's see. Someone asked what I do for a living. I teach private lessons right now. At some point, I hope after maybe I can get enough people following me on my combo journey to teach and learn. Maybe I'll monetize some of these things, but I've purposefully not tried to make any money off my videos yet and just do it as an artistic and creative and for the pursuit of teaching thing. And it would be awesome at some point to monetize my videos. And at that point, maybe I will have that be my job. For now, what I do, and I'm recovering from some surgeries, so I don't work a huge amount right now, but I have private students. And I actually have a bunch of music students, and I teach math as well. But the majority of my students right now happen to be learning instruments from me. So I do one-on-one lessons, often through the camera like this. Um, and I teach a lot of music theory and math and stuff. Someone said that a bee stung them on the cheek and they have a crater on the skin, barely noticeable, but the bee caused it. Damn, yeah, the cheek, that would be a pretty bad spot to get stung. I can think of like at least 5 body parts that you would not want a bee to sting. For me to get it in like the knee as a kid, that was probably the easiest possible spot to take the damage. Someone from the Netherlands said they love the content, and thank you. I love having fans from all over. It really is cool because spreading knowledge that one area may learn may be awesome for another area to learn. One of the books that I was reading the other week is called The Moscow Puzzles, and it's puzzles that were from other areas like in Russia and Europe that were translated by Martin Gardner, a great logician and collector of puzzles, into American, and it contains a bunch of puzzles that I've never seen in any American texts because it just has some really other thoughts emerged and other seeds being planted and other things being taught and explored. So great to share things across the world that was only possible relatively recently. So maybe that's something I can help achieve a little bit of in this world, is to share some knowledge using this weird technology of the internet that now exists in ways that some of my great heroes like Euler and Ramanujan were not able to. So someone asked how fast I am at flying. I haven't been able to pass 0 miles per hour yet, or 0 kilometers per hour in another measurement. I could translate that to other ways of measuring too, but I think most of them it would be called 0. So no flight abilities yet. Although you never know, maybe one of these days, when I divide by 0 the wrong way, maybe it'll happen. How old am I? I am 29. That's okay to ask. Some people think I'm younger. Some people think I'm older. I have a pretty childish way of laughing at things and sense of humor and try and see the world in a slightly youthful way just because that's what I find funny and interesting sometimes. Sometimes people also think I'm older just because I've been through some experiences where I almost died. And so I have certain ways in which I feel like I've seen a lot in this world already. But other ways in which I have a million things still to explore. Um, So let's see what else people wondering. 22 was a guess, or 26. So yeah, people were guessing younger. I'm not super surprised. I can look kind of young, especially when I shave. I'll look even younger. But I actually turned 29 recently. So that's where we're at. I had some wild 20s that I'll fill you guys in on over the course of many different streams and written texts and such. So many crazy stories to share from my 20s. I didn't get started on this combo class channel teaching journey, this particular awesome journey I'm on, until this year. But this is now a journey that I'm having a lot of fun with, and I see continuing into my future. How did I learn math and music? A comment wonders. If I went to university, and they're from Germany. Hello. Um, I want to, let's see. I kind of explained this in a previous stream a little bit, but I didn't study at a super typical way. I took a few years of college, and although I was always in advanced math classes and I was accepted into nice colleges, I went to just some local city colleges because I was at the same time spending some time pursuing a lot of musical things and written projects and just getting sidetracked by life. And so I ended up only taking about 2 years worth, like a 2 year degree worth of classes around various city colleges in a collected web in Berkeley and Oakland and places. And even though I had been accepted to some UC colleges that I didn't go to, partially for financial reasons and partially for personal reasons of how I wanted to learn, but I've done most of my learning through reading and writing and through thinking about patterns. And a lot of it is reading and trying to find ways in which things I read connect to other things I have seen in life or thought before, and taking many notes about them, comparing and condensing my notes over time, and seeing what things in the end I find interesting or multifaceted in ways that maybe haven't been shared before exactly. But a lot of the things that I've learned over the years didn't necessarily come from typical school. A lot more of them came from personal explorations or studying on my own. So I don't know, I may take more singular classes in the future if I find a particular thing interesting, but I don't see myself getting a 4 year college degree. I'm going down a less typical path of starting my own weird school instead. Um, Now, let's see. People wonder how I get my video ideas, how I came across Hyper 11s, for example. Well, basically, out of all of the notes I take every day, I do tons of writing after I read and think and explore in nature and on my whiteboards and notebooks and such. And out of the thoughts I condense, some of them are such a deep thing I want to go into that I try and fit them into a book I'm working on, and those are vast projects I hope to finish someday. Some of them are much smaller level, and those ones are TikTok worthy, or I call them that in my head because I started posting them on TikTok, but YouTube Shorts worthy, a short little clip, ones that I make under a minute. And those are ideas that I think are catchy in a way that I can explain them and get a hook in and a little explanation within a minute. And then there are some that are in between those sizes and depths. And the in between ones, I usually make episodes for my full channel, which is kind of my passion project right now. The main combo class channel, like with the Hyper 11 episode they mentioned. And that particular one was just something I'd stumbled onto throughout many explorations. This thing that 11 and numbers composed of ones did interesting things when you multiplied them or divided them, tested if they were prime and so on. And after stumbling into them many times, at first I thought maybe they're a little base dependent too much, meaning they're just because we're in base 10. But after looking at how they would apply to other ways of counting, I realized, oh, the number that meant 11111 in that base would still do interesting things because the way that things can go 11111 just as digits has interesting traits. And 11, instead of thinking of it as, oh, it happens to be 11 items, if you think of it as one more than the base we're counting in, then you can kind of generalize it. And so after seeing some generalized versions of that, I was like, oh, these strings of 11s are pretty fun. I like to think of them like a Hyper 11. Why not nickname them that? Why not make a whole episode where I'm using that nickname and going into a lot of their patterns and using the nickname as an excuse to kind of compile all the patterns that related to them in one spot. And all of my current thoughts that I had cooking about that type of number. And so I guess a lot of them just get boiled down in my notebooks and computer documents over time. And eventually, once they've been boiled down enough, I'm like, I better film this thing. and I wait until I have a friend around or a family member to help me and make some episodes. And someone's wondering how my table broke. There is some content of that, but it will also show up in the second YouTube episode from now on the main channel. The next episode explains my clocks, and that was filmed before it broke. The episode after that will explain tetration and hyperoperations, and that was filmed the day my table broke, so the footage will be included in that, but it is also in a short video that you can catch here. Some of the videos I've been posting on this channel are reposts of ones that I filmed a month or two ago while I'm catching this channel up, because I've only had this bonus channel like a month. And so you may notice the table not broken in a few. Those are the ones that may have been filmed a couple weeks ago while I'm still catching this channel up to the current state of all the videos being filmed since April, but me just having this channel out for the past month. So there's some old ones in the mix. But the table is broken since a week or two ago. And it was because, as you could find in a video, on a very rainy day, after enough rains and fires and tools had taken their tolls on this thing, I leaned on it kind of hard in a video, thinking, oh, maybe it's going to creak a little under my weight, because it's been creaking lately. And I did not expect that it was actually going to completely collapse, and it fell over and also spilled a clock that happened out of all my clocks. It was the one with a glass covering on it that goes and shatters. So, yeah, now my table's like this. Now I'm still in the middle of grade -1 of combo class I'm teaching you guys. We haven't moved on to grade -2 yet. So I might get a new desk in the next couple months, but worst case scenario, I'll get a new one when grade -2 starts. But we're only about 40% of the way through grade -1. So, you know, you might need to wait a little while to see when the new desk and the new lab coat come. Another love from India. Thank you for all the fans across the world saying hi. And a gaming stream, not really. I'm not a huge gamer. I might do streams that involve where you see my computer screen, like how some people game. But I would probably be going through Wikipedia or taking notes or filming myself making whiteboards of notes or something. So less likely to do a straight up gaming stream, unless at some point in the future, maybe I'll bust out some games that I liked as a child and play through those. Now, what are the cats' names? Good question, because I actually was going to bring that up earlier before I got sidetracked by wasps, because when I talk about my garden, I got to mention my cats. So I have, well, let me start from a while ago. I'm not going to go into the full story, but I had two old cats that were very dear to me that were here for many great years of my life, named Twitherby and Jitterbug, who we adopted from the shelter from a young age, who I had throughout a lot of my childhood years. They were magnificent cats, and unfortunately, they did meet dark ends, even though they lived till a nice longish life. They were 15, but one got eaten by a dog, and one had another dark end. Not like fully eaten by a dog, but gotten by a dog in a deadly way. And so they had kind of dark ends. But from there, my family fostered some cats, and we got some tiny kittens. And these little two kittens, who there was a little silky one and a fluffy one. And at that point, they didn't have names yet. Actually, the Humane Society gives them names that are just their temporary names. So they did have those, which are now one of their middle names. And they named them after Harry Potter characters. And they named the little one Dumbledore and the other one Lupin. And the Lupin fit really well, because I think Lupin and Harry Potter, I don't want to do spoilers, but there's stuff involved to fluff or wolf-like things, and this cat is very fluffy, so I could imagine him in a wolf-like way. That one, there's a fluff ball. Then his brother, who's also a little black cat with an identical little white spot there, is a silky one, and that one I thought didn't really fit Dumbledore at first. He was a little small, silky, agile one. Then I realized this is maybe what Dumbledore was like at a young age, and he is truly wise, and maybe they do secretly fit those names a little. But their real names that they have developed into are named after plants, and they reminded me of these plants, as well as them having a little double meaning in the names that I liked. And so the small silky one is named Sage because he is small and silky, kind of like parts of a sage plant, and because he is wise like a sage. And the fluffy one is named Dandelion because he is a dandy lion. He looks like a little lion and he's very dandy. And he's as fluffy as a dandelion. So there you go. He's also very soft and nice, and the other one's so wise, and I could talk about them for a long time because they have saved me from some dark times and they're awesome. Now, over the years, as I had these cats, some clones appeared in the neighborhood, cats that looked identical. And this kind of made sense. I have a theory that they could be related because we adopted these foster kittens that we ended up keeping when they were just 6 weeks old from a humane society very close to my house, just a few blocks away. And the Humane Society gets a lot of their cats as strays from the neighborhood. Now, I think it's very likely that they got these cats as strays because I've heard tales from neighbors that some of the little black cats that have been going wild in this abandoned house across the street recently in the past couple years were picked up by the Humane Society. And other cats in that crazy house have not been picked up. And I think that some of the ones that weren't picked up, who could be cousins or brothers or parents of my cats, were started showing up in the yard. Now, I'll separate from the theory that they're necessarily related, and I'm just going to call them the clones for now because they look so identical. There was a clone of the silky one who looked older, who might have been a dad or a mom or something. I guess a dad because I think it was male. And the neighbors who own one of the houses adopted him and called him Muscle Cat, and his name's Muscle Cat. That's what they named him because he was really muscular. Don't ask me. So Muscle Cat now lives somewhere else, but now other clones started showing up. There was even a fluffy one, and my fluffy cat looks weird. And so when there was a clone of him, I was like, what? Is this them from the future coming back to warn them about some apocalypse or something? So the fluffy clone lives across the street. I call him Daffodil to fit the plant names. And he visits once in a while, but he's so shy. But then this other clone started coming, and he was a small, silky one that looked almost identical to my silky one without the white spot right there. And he was nice. He didn't cause any ruckus. He was coming, trying to hang out and be a member of the family in an incredibly shy way. And after being nice enough for a long enough time, he got taken to the Humane Society, or not to, I guess, a Humane Society, or what, I forget the exact name for that place. And he got fixed and brought back and adopted. And now I have 3 cats, and his name is Sassafras because he had to fit a plant name too, and he reminded me of that. And so Sassafras is still warming up. He's stray, so he doesn't sleep inside, and he was feral like a year ago. But he's so nice for someone who used to be a feral cat like a year ago. He used to just like keep like a mile distance from me. But as he slowly approached and let me start to touch him and start to pet him, he's never bitten or scratched me in a way that's drawn the blood. Hardly ever bitten or scratched me at all. He's just a little scaredy cat who's warmed up to me. And now he likes when I pet him. And he comes in the morning and waits for pets. So what can I say? I now have 3 black cats. Having 3 cats is a little silly, but what can I say? They get a cool garden to hang out in. Someone says they're like base 16. That's an interesting one, hexadecimal. Now, that does have some good uses. It's kind of like if you wanted to use binary, but you wanted it to be more applicable for a less computer-like thing where you had more digits to use. Because for computers, 2 characters, 0 and 1 is enough. But like for humans, we found having somewhere around 10 might be useful. Not that 10's the best, but maybe, somewhere in that range is something humans can use. So 16 is a more humanified binary in a way. It has some uses, but it's not one of my favorites because it's not good at handling 3-even numbers, multiples of 3. Has some of the same flaws that base 10 has. Better than base 10, maybe. However, I would put base 12 above base 10 and base 6 even above that. Base 6 is elegant and beautiful, captures the evens and the 3-evens perfectly. I'll teach you more about why base 6 is magical in some full videos someday. Base 12 is also very acceptable and very similar to base 6 in a lot of ways. Someone's asking about the Hackenbush game. Good question. So that's a game that John Conway helped invent that relates to new types of numbers you have to invent to describe game positions. And I don't know it from that book, which I still really want to read. I need to get the Winning Ways book. Really want to read that soon. But I do know it from its briefer mention in his book, The Book of Numbers, written by John Conway and Richard Guy. There's a chapter near the end that focuses on Hackenbush for a while. It's a simple game where you have little sticks of different colors that could be seen as being removed from branches like they were cut off. And if you remove a branch, it separates the rest of the stem. And if you had nearly infinitely long branches, which player would have the last win of being able to cut a straw last in the right way? And having calculations of which player will inherently be able to have the last win in this sort of game between two players ends up needing to invent new types of number to describe. And John Conway was awesome for that, for experimenting with games that turned out to have cool applications, turning out to relate to things like what's called surreal numbers that are occasionally used and involve a whole different way of approaching the number line than we're used to. So I really want to read Winning Ways, which I'm sure will go more detailed into the Hackenbush game. Um, so someone says third base is the best. Ternary is interesting, and I'm also interested in balanced ternary. You guys ever heard of balanced ternary? Your three characters are 1, 0, and -1. Pretty interesting, huh? Kind of makes sense in a weird way. So someone else says base 16 is only divisible by powers of 2. That's what I'm saying. I agree with this comment by Florian that base 12 has many more divisors and many more types of divisor. Someone else asks if I agree that the sum of all the numbers equals -1/112th. And they also don't want me to replace or wash the lab coat. Thank you. I will probably only replace it. Maybe I'll replace it once a grade, but the grades last a long time here. And it probably won't be replaced until it is destroyed fully, which will take a while. Because even when I tried to put out a fire with this, it doesn't really burn the lab coat. And at first I was like, why is this thing so unburnable? And then I realized it is like designed for fire too, not just for my uses of protecting me from thorns and ink and stuff, but actually pretty good against fire too. So it'll be a while before this thing is in shreds enough that I'm done with it. Now about the numbers equaling -1/12. No, they don't equal that in a standard way. There are a way they do, but it's not fair to say that the sum of the numbers equals them. The sum of the numbers, if you add up all the natural numbers, is divergent and goes toward infinity. So it cannot be assigned a sum other than calling it divergent. Now, the reason why a lot of people talk about this -1/12 thing is that there was a video on the channel Numberphile, which is an awesome channel that oversimplified a cool idea about a different way of summing numbers. For sums that are divergent, that you are not allowed to apply a normal sum to because they just go off toward infinity, there are other ways to kind of hack the sum, change the definition of what an equals sign means, and then in those contexts, you can find some interesting patterns. Now, a lot of these were explored by the great mathematician Ramanujan, who just died way too young, came up with brilliant theorems in his dreams and in strange places and ways that nobody really knows how he came across without standardized schooling, or maybe because he wasn't in standardized schooling. Just the most elaborate formulas and the most brilliant things he stumbled towards and into. And some of the things he looked at were other ways of assigning sums to divergent series. And one of the other ways, sometimes called a Ramanujan summation, you can assign the value -1/12 to what the natural numbers do. There are also places where the -1/12 shows up related to something called the Riemann zeta function, but it's more of this continuation of it than of a simple plug in a number. Now, because of all that, and because there was a Numberphile video that oversimplified that, unfortunately, and I don't mean this with any disrespect to Numberphile, they're one of the greatest channels out there on YouTube. I highly recommend them. They have so many cool concepts on there. And in fact, I really hope to work with them someday because one of the dude's sponsors, the guy who films it, He doesn't live anywhere near here, but one of the people who pay for the videos, who he sometimes films at or near, is like a couple miles from me, up there related to UC Berkeley, an organization called is it the MSR? The MSRI are one of the people who fund him, and there's a lot of cool mathematicians in this area he's interviewed. And if Brady from Numberphile ever wants to work with me, I would love to, and have ideas I've saved for that exact type of thing. So I highly recommend the channel. But with that said, they oversimplified this one video about that. They made it seem a little bit like it is the sum of the numbers as opposed to it's the sum if you do a Ramanujan summation. They manipulated numbers in a way that you're not allowed to do and call it a normal equals. So it's not a normal equals. The sum of the normal natural numbers is divergent. There are cool ways it relates to the number -1/12, but we can't say it's just the sum of it, like some people unfortunately would say. It has tricked some people into being like, oh, math is so weird that we just have to trust math, and it's so absurd that these mathematicians are just making up stuff practically. And while there's a lot of experimentation in math, we stumble into a lot of truth. And you still have to admit things like with a normal way of interpreting the equals sign, the sum of the normal natural numbers does not go to -1/12. Going forward, someone asked about mathematically cloning cats. Good thought. I don't know how humane that is while we still figure out cloning or in general. So I don't know the details about that, but I love my cats. I wouldn't mind if there was just magically clones of them throughout the world. I think that clones of my cats would sell for $1 million because they're so cool. And I think the ancient Egyptians would worship my cats. I think that my silky cat is like what the ancient Egyptians thought the ideal cat was. Like that was like their cat statue. And then I think my fluffy cat would have just baffled them with both his look and his attitude. And the way he just like flops out and freezes in weird poses, like, oh, are you going to pet my stomach? Well, I'll just hang out here until you do, in some weird glitched out mode. He would baffle them and they would be equally in love with him. Somebody here grew up with 14 cats and said never enough cats. I am going to mostly agree, and that's pretty cool. But to be honest, I'm going to say maybe 14 is enough cats, although the never enough is a nice thought. 14 might be the point we can call enough, but that still sounds pretty wild and cool. Um, Someone's wondering if I have gotten a reverse clock for that 4 times a day accuracy. I haven't tried working with any engineers or figuring that out myself yet. And no, when I looked online for a reverse clock to go the simple route of buying one, the ones that went backwards had the numbers going backwards too. They're like, this is a fun, nifty gimmick. My numbers and my hand are going backwards, but it tells the accurate time. That's not my goal. My goal is to be perfectly right 4 times a day, not to be wanna be right, just happen to go mirror direction. So I haven't. I really want one. If anyone wants to help me build one or send me a backwards working clock, you'll get a huge shout out. And as a reminder, if anybody, I don't even know if I've mentioned this on here much, but if anybody wants to help collaborate and help me with any type of editing, any type of strange invention like backward clocks, any weird skills you happen to know, or any weird things you happen to have, or things that you think I'd be interested in, or a super fan who just wants to help me out in any way, you can find my contact link on the page, and you can feel free to email me at combouniversity@gmail.com. And I'm down to hear from people who want to help out in any way. I have already, when I asked some fans on another website, talked to some programmers who I've talked about programming some integer sequences with, as well as some other people with some other interesting skills. And I like chatting with people who know about math or know a bunch about a weird thing. I love chatting with my friends all the time, but I feel like I already talk my friends' ear off. My friends is whatever the word for that is, ear off about math enough. And my friends, a lot of them are more along the lines of artists and musicians and filmmakers than pure math heads. they like the first 20 minutes of my math ranting and then might start tuning out. So I want to just chat to more people about inventing weird math ideas. I'm actually investigating a very interesting type of sequence right now that I don't know if it's been investigated before. My nickname for it is a pond forest sequence because it makes a forest of numbers with a simple rule, and I found pond-like shapes in it. I also found Sierpinski's triangle in a simple version of it. So I'll present that in a video soon. I also found three even numbers having importance in it, without it even being in the original rule that three evens relate. So this stream is turning out to like I expected, and I have fun doing just me going down the comments and kind of ranting about a lot of them. And so if I haven't gotten to people's comments, I'm just going down the line and we'll chat about most of these comments or questions. And in between that, tell you guys stories, but a lot of the stories can be started by the comments anyway. So it's always fun to read these and use that as a jumping off point. Now, someone's saying that his early death's a tragedy for math, assuming meaning Ramanujan. Yes, it really was. If he had lived longer, who knows what he would have discovered. Um, really, really brilliant thoughts that he came up with. He's probably the youngest mathematician, to their death date, that I would put in my like top few of all time influential mathematicians. Although after that, I got to mention Galois, Galois, however you want to pronounce it. And that guy invented a field of math called Galois theory, essentially, that was published in letters to people when he was young enough that all of his studies into the field that got named after him, were before he died in a duel when he was 20. And some people think it was like a political conspiracy because he was politically involved in things, and some people think the government may have killed him. Others think it was just a duel over some lost love or some love conflict. In any case, most likely it was a duel, and he died when he was 20 and got a whole field named after him. Not quite as influential or innovative as Ramanujan, but still gotta shout out Galois. Now, next, someone's asking, or before, what's my favorite math constant? I would have to give it honestly a tie between a few. So in the Hall of Fame, I can't give a single one because there's so many constants out there. So I'm going to give the top like S tier, as you'd see on a tier list. The people sometimes put S at the top for people who don't watch that type of thing. But in a list of all the things, my S tier on top of constants involves pi, for showing up so fundamentally for the importance of circles and circular things and the sneaky way circles sneak into so many things. E, for the way that it shows up all throughout rates of growth, certain equations, constants, all sorts of equations in general, complex numbers, and all sorts of things. E has to be there. The golden ratio has to be there, as even though it's not a transcendental type of irrational number, because it can be expressed algebraically, it has some really cool properties, and it is in a way the hardest irrational number to approximate with fractions. Out of all the infinite irrational numbers, the hardest to make a fraction that's close to for a given size. And that relates to its continued fraction being 1 plus 1 over 1 plus 1 over 1 plus 1 over forever, which we will see more about as things continue, because the golden ratio does show up a lot of random places. So those are in the top three. And then if you're talking constants that include numbers, you need to put the numbers 1, 2, 3, and probably 6, because I just love 6 as the first three even on there. 6 is in less things as a constant. So maybe I'll just use 2 and 3 to build my 6, and I'll put 1, 2, and 3 on there. 0, if you count it, has to be in the S tier. I has to be in the S tier. The square root of 2 as the diagonal of a square, how much longer the diagonal of any size square is compared to a side. Square root of 2, and just as representations of that type of irrational number, got to be S tier. And that's maybe the end of my S tier of constants. But there's some really cool ones. There's a whole A tier out of other ones that we can get into. Someone's asking a little lower about the Euler-Mascheroni. I don't know how to pronounce it, but that constant that relates to that ever so slight difference between a logarithmic function and the harmonic series is one way of finding it. And that one's really cool. I would put that in A tier, maybe S tier. That one is pretty awesome because I like the those infinite series sort of things, and the comparison right there of that little edge of difference is pretty cool. Um, Now, someone's saying if I could open a clock, maybe I can reverse the mechanism. That is true. I am not much of a handyman, so I'll fiddle around with it one day. Maybe that'll be a live stream one day. How many clocks do I accidentally break before figuring out how to make one go backwards? That sounds like a good live stream name. Uh, so let's see. Someone's saying that the modifications changing load and friction will affect accuracy. That's true. As long as I time it in a 24-hour period and it's pretty close to that, I'm cool with it. I don't need it to be exactly 4 times a day. That'd be cool knowing it's between 3 and 5 times right a day. Um, Now, someone's saying if I've done other projects on the internet. Yes, I have. There are whole webs of other YouTube channels I've made, musical albums I've released, and all sorts of things. You're not going to find them by looking up Combo Class or Demotro, but I will share them as time goes on. I've released an insane amount of different projects over the years, and there are even more unreleased ones. A few things that you guys will see of my other projects as time goes on are um, one thing that I didn't fully put online, but there's a trailer for it somewhere, is a whole 20-minute episode of like a TV show I made about clues and spies. There's a whole side YouTube channels I made where I did different types of content, multiple side YouTube channels I've made in the past. There's music I've released under various names that some of which are hip hop, some of which are rock, some of which are with my squad of friends, some are alone, including in the year 2013, I dropped 13 mixtapes. Now, I'm sure somebody could track this down if they want, but you don't need to. I'll share it before too long. Um, Now, someone's asking about my opinion on pi or tau. I'm going to be honest. I understand the people who think tau makes more sense, tau being twice pi and having some formulas it would simplify. I honestly think that pi makes the majority of formulas maybe neater. It's arguable, but I think I prefer pi in how the majority of formulas would simplify. There are times where tau is cool. It's not far off. They could have named the circle constant pi or twice pi, but got to admit, I'm on Team Pi for now, although as I do more research, you never know. I'll keep you guys notified if I flip teams. Now, let's see. Someone's wondering if I enjoy, or wait, no, back a few. Someone's wondering if I've tried applying maths principles to alphabets. Kind of. I've thought about which letters are useless in alphabets and looked up in our phonetic sounds ways that we could simplify the English alphabet. And from my random opinions on what letters we should kick out of the English alphabet and which ways we should reclump the things like k, ch, and t, th. I did make 2 full episodes on my Combo Class main YouTube channel, just the one called Combo Class, that are about the English language. I made those a month or 2 ago, covering some thoughts about ways we could try and update the language. So it's not really using math exactly, but it's me as a mathematical thinker taking a little look at what sounds we need. Now, as far as analyzing what a language could be in general, as a kid, I loved trying to invent languages. I would invent alphabets, I would invent ciphers, and sometimes I would even try and invent what words mean to try and make a whole dictionary. And I never finished a whole dictionary because I'd get sidetracked with too many different ones I would start over the years. So I tried to invent too many different languages to finish one. But I did have plenty of weird ciphers and alphabets and stuff. So I have had a lot of fun thinking about how you could do that. I'm sure alphabets will show up in future videos because linguistics can be pretty interesting too. Although usually in my math videos, I wind up in a mood of like, let's praise these numbers. Life's magnificent. Look at all these numbers, guys. And in my English language alphabet ones, like about the English language in particular, because that's what I know the most, I always end up in a mood of like, God damn it, why did they make the alphabet like this? So it's kind of a different mood. Someone's wondering if someone did say it's possible to swap the mechanism, and they found one on eBay. That's cool. I should look on more used websites. Someone else asked if I enjoy chess. I love chess. Yeah. So the chessboard that I have there was just being used in the videos I've made so far that use it as a way of displaying a grid. It's a very simple grid. If you 8x8 is all you need, have a chessboard ready. However, I do like chess, both in terms of I like the theory of it and I like playing with friends. I'm not good at chess by any means. When I was in like fifth grade, when I was 10, I was in a chess club. But I remember that even though I was in chess club, there were other more practice kids who spent more time on it. I was distracted by all sorts of things and would just get to chess once in a while. And so once there was like a tournament, and normally I wouldn't go to the tournaments, I would just do play in the chess club. And they were supposed to bring like the top four people to from our team or our school to go to some tournament, and one of the people was sick or something, so I filled the fourth role, and I really didn't know how to hold my own in a tournament, and I was like all this nervous 10-year-old, like, what am I doing here? I'm not a chess whiz. I have too many different hobbies to have dedicated enough time to chess. So I only play chess every once in a while, but a few of my friends like chess, and they're a little better than me, but I can beat them like a quarter of the time because they play online sometimes and I never do. But when I play my friends, I get a little practice. I also like looking into the theory behind chess. What's really interesting about the game chess is that it is the type of game where it is inherent that it must either be there is some set of rules that the first person can use to always win, some forking path of strategies that they have as some massive book that couldn't be stored in our universe, of what they do at any possible circumstance that the first person always wins. There's some set of moves that the second person always wins, or there is some set of moves that both players can employ to always tie, assuming they are both playing ideal. There's one of those three is guaranteed. However, chess is complex enough that the set of rules in that book that you'd need might be too big for any alien or human species to ever calculate. Now, what I'm interested in is what is the simplest chess like game that we can invent? I like making up games. And so I always try and get my friends to test out my games too, where I'm like, this coin has this move. This is what our quarters do. This is what our bottle caps do. Just with whatever I've laying around, assigning simple moves to pieces with the goal of making a game that's complex enough to be a little beyond the bounds of humans calculating its solvability of which player wins with what strategy or how you force a tie. A little too complex to solve, beyond checkers or Connect Four, but simple enough rules. Because I think that you don't need as many different pieces as chess to make such a complicated game. So I like chess. But even more so, I like the concept of a game on a small grid-like board that has pieces that move like that. Not necessarily the chess rules, although that's what I end up playing the most because that's what people know. So chess is fun. I like chess. Someone's asking if this is my second channel down here. Yes, so basically I have my main combo class channel. That's like my passion project. And so I've been posting so many short videos on TikTok at first, just because I wanted to draw more people to learn about random stuff. And I knew a lot of people were on there, and some of my topics I could fit in these little digestible minutes for that. And then I decided, why am I just doing it there? I actually like YouTube more. I'm going to start posting them on YouTube Shorts too, along with catching up on old ones and just start making new ones, thinking more about YouTube Shorts too going forward. And I didn't want to put them on the main channel for a few reasons. And I also wanted to have a bonus channel anyway to do live streams like this and just random side videos and stuff that I might drop. So I ended up putting all my short videos on a side channel called Combo Class Bonus, and it has become way more popular than my main channel, which is somewhat expected because people love short videos. So that's the way it goes. My bonus channel has a lot more people on it than the main one. That's fine because this is where I wanted to put the streams anyway. The other one is kind of like more of a little passion project and long-term goal. that also could be referred to like classroom teachers or people who just want to fully digest topics that I've fully thought about and made sure I want to present a certain way. Um, Looking what else we got here. Asking how I think math will change or what discoveries will be like. That's really hard to predict, and I do need to catch up on comments, so I can't fully get into that. But I think that there will be constant changing in math. I guess one example I'll give of a field that is relatively new that will have a lot more investigation is complex numbers. They were underrated for many years, and the name imaginary and complex isn't doing them any favors. And so, complex numbers have a lot of applications that were only investigated not too long ago. And so, I think those will show a lot more cool, practical, interesting things within them. I think that also, as we continue to go forward in having like computer ability to study things, I think that we're going to get a lot of interesting things out of self-automated fractal shapes and what sorts of shapes happen on cellular automata type grids, and also rules for if you made grid-like sequences and having computers test different sorts of sequences to see relationships of numbers. I also think that one I mentioned maybe in the past live stream is a cool conjecture on the horizon that I could imagine being solved before long is the twin prime conjecture. I have some hopes that that might be solved in like 5 years or so, based on some progress that was made on it in the past 20 years. Um, Going down, someone likes tau better. That's fine as a physicist. All good. Shout out the tau team too. Nothing against them. Somebody could build a rig with two clocks face to face with sensors which signal when hands are in the same position, and that should count. Yeah. I want one of each type of clock that's possible. I want all the types of clock that's possible. I'm accumulating hundreds of clocks, as you'll see in my next YouTube episode. That'll explain it more, but I am accumulating hundreds. So I have room to accumulate all sorts of different types. Someone said was a good episode. Not sure which episode they mean, but thank you. Maybe they mean the language one I was talking about. Thanks. Digitally with simple script. Yeah, let's see. Barbershop clock because customers would view it in the mirror. From eBay on. Oh, that's what they found it on eBay. They called it the barbershop clock. That makes sense. Interestingly, it's a mirror clock. So yeah, I should get one of those, and I should get some mirrors around as well. That'll help. Maybe I need to cover this place in mirrors. Not great for cameramen. Cameramen have to dodge mirrors. This is the grade of the fire, clocks, and dice. And other grades will probably have a lot of that too, but in grade -2 or grade -3, there might be a billion of something else around here, like doors or mirrors or who knows what. Um, Somebody else is saying people love shorts, and especially for maths, not many people attempt to put math into shorts. Yeah, that's why I think some of them here have been doing well pretty quickly, is that it's somewhat of an untapped niche or niche, however you say that. And I think not as many creators are doing that because a lot of people who are really good at creating math are, I feel like, too used to old-fashioned ways of presenting things. Like some of the smartest people to come up with proofs are so old-fashioned they wouldn't even put it in video form. Then people of a slightly next generation are old-fashioned enough they might not be used to the shorts format and the vertical thing especially, which it took me a while to get used to the vertical thing as a possibility for what I would do because I like watching things horizontally usually. So it took me a while to want to start filming some of my stuff vertically and to understand the reason why I might want to do that in this world. So I think it takes some channels a while to adapt, and I was pretty surprised to see that pretty much none of my favorite math creators on YouTube who make long form YouTube videos were making short videos. And so I was like, wow, there's a lot of topics that people who just watch short videos aren't going to get. I better show them my take on those topics. Um, and now going down, someone's asking what instruments I know. I know piano, guitar, ukulele, bass, digital production to a degree. which is actually one of my favorites, although I'm not adept at mixing and mastering as much as this songwriting and beat creating part. And I also um, can mess around on some other stuff, but those are the main ones. Those are the ones that I teach. And someone says they're going to head off to bed because it's 1 a.m. there. It's time, different times all over different places. I wonder if any of these times passed for any of you guys. That's got to be a thing I do while I stream. If anybody out there sees the time that it is where you live pass on one of these, let me know. Um, so yeah, all good if people got to head off and go to bed. I'm just chatting for a while. Now that it's been about an hour, I'm going to head off before too long anyway, as well. Might work on some editing of that clock episode I mentioned today to try and get that one out before long. Explain to you guys more about why I have so many clocks. Now, someone else is asking here, is there any formula I don't like? Perhaps to the point I wish it was proven wrong. Huh. A formula I don't like. Um, I don't know if I have any animosity or hate toward any particular formula or equation. There are ones that could be neater to use or easier that are a little tricky to work with that aren't very friendly. But I don't know if there's any I necessarily don't like. That's a good question, though. I bet I could come across one. There's certain ways of presenting formulas or writing them I don't like that much, certain types of mathematical notation. So, for example, a logarithm. I really think like a logarithm I don't dislike. That's a very fundamental concept. But writing log and then the little base number, or sometimes assuming the base number to be 10, or sometimes assuming the base number to be e, I don't like that. The way logs are written is bad. Logarithms are very similar to both exponents and square roots, and they're written in such vastly different ways that it's absurd. So there are some notations I think could be updated. There are some formulas I bet if I think about it long enough, I could figure like, oh man, I kind of don't like that formula. But good question, because I cannot think of one off the top of my head. Someone's heading off a good night, and someone's asking if I could change anything about the standard education system, what would I do? I would change so much. That's why I'm making my own school here instead of going to school more. So I would change so many things about the way a lot of classes are taught. But I guess one of the fundamental ones is that I think that a lot of math is taught based on formulas that are important to use, but by drilling that formula into a student's brain so that the student's really good at being able to calculate the answers to the formula very efficiently, drilling it in really hard for one semester, then forgetting it and moving on and pretending it doesn't exist. Instead of slowly interweaving concepts, and instead of drilling in something by, you got to plug in number 22, now you got to plug in the number 50, now you got to plug in the number 80, take more different approaches to looking at what are equations actually doing. Try and show a geometric way of looking at it. Try and show one way that's a word problem and one way that's a number problem. Try and show a way it could be philosophical. Try and show a way it could show up in art or nature. So for anything, you have a lot of opportunities to make it beautiful. And a lot of teachers kind of skim past so many of the possible ways they can make a topic beautiful, jump to the drilling in equations into the students' heads, sometimes even before the students have gotten a fundamental gut sense for what these equations are doing, which is what scares off so many students from calculus sometimes, is having to use derivatives and integrals before they understand fundamentally what those things mean. Um, and so I think that a lot of the time there's so much more beauty to be interwoven instead of so much focus on calculation. I think that students are also given always such a less creative way of tackling a problem. I think there should be more creativity. There should almost be more of a halfway point between English classes making students write a creative essay and math classes making you fill in the answers to a bunch of formulas. What about asking students more often, what do you notice in this series of numbers? What about asking them, can you predict the next number and what are reasons you could? And then If they can't, maybe showing them pictures of the numbers instead of numbers. So there's a lot of different ways that we could shine different lights on topics, as opposed to jumping to 5 million different calculations to do with this formula before next semester, when we'll pretend it doesn't exist and introduce the next formula. So there's a bunch I would change about school. Not to say I didn't have some good teachers. Some of my teachers were good. But, in general, the curriculum, I don't really agree with the way math curriculum is structured or ordered fully. So that's a long question to get into over the course of many streams and videos, is possible corrections that we could do to how to teach. For now, I would say maybe more people can just try and trust me that I have learned a lot from being curious about the world, reading a ton, looking for similarities between different things I have learned, and taking notes, and that those things have come very far for me. So, and I did not list going to school on one of those, and that is useful for many people. It is also useful in our climate, so like our social climate. So, school is a less risky path too, because you're set up for more jobs than me, who is trusting that I will be able to find students as a private teacher or someday make money off videos or whatever. So, school is safer. It also will give you a deeper look sometimes into a singular field than I got. So nothing against school necessarily. It's the right path for a lot of people. But personally, I disagreed with enough of the way school is teaching stuff that I would find myself skipping class to read math books. And then I knew, why was I going to school right now? So, and that doesn't apply to people before college. Like, whether or not school is doing the right thing, go to your classes at least until the end of high school. I skipped some classes in high school, but I managed to still get A's and B's and learn the core topics. So try and learn what your classes are teaching, even if they're not doing it in the best way. Whether or not they are, there's something the curriculum's trying to teach you. So even if it's semi bullshit, go to your classes whenever you can and try and learn your stuff. Then you can decide if you want to pursue a certain thing in college or go on a crazy path like me. And like, not that I'm recommending, but I guess my point is that, like I said, combo class is pro B and neutral on Wasp. Combo class is pro learning and neutral on school. That's in neither positive nor negative category for me. Someone's asking my opinion on 3 Blue 1 Brown here. I love 3 Blue 1 Brown. I think that the videos made by Grant and his team are works of art and beautiful. And whenever one of his new ones drops, I'm like, all right, I got to wait until I really have a good evening to sit down and fully enjoy this. This is going to be another work of art, probably. He recently did a really cool like online thing too, where he tried to get a lot more math creation on YouTube. So like the newest video on his channel is actually trying to link other math creators on YouTube. It wasn't something I applied to. I was busy making my own videos, but it was a series he made to try and motivate other people to apply into a program thing he was doing for get more math on YouTube, which is awesome. So I salute him for that too. I'm looking forward to looking at the videos that he helped inspire come to life too. And in general, I look up to that channel a lot. My presentation's very different than him, but I think that he does a magnificent job at handling subjects. I would say that in terms of math content on YouTube, that channel would be tied for my favorite with Mathologer, this German dude who presents really detailed, interesting things, including some proofs he's invented himself in the form of YouTube videos, and who goes into really in-depth, awesome things. Different style than 3 Blue 1 Brown, but those two, 3 Blue 1 Brown and Mathologer, I would say are two channels on YouTube that make magnificent works of art. I'll also shout out Stand Up Maths, run by Matt Parker. Awesome videos also. And I'll shout out Numberphile, who I mentioned earlier. They're great as well. Someone's thinking about where the clock hands would cross. Yeah, I want to make another full video soon about some comparisons of when all sorts of different clocks would be right, how often they would be right throughout the day for all variations. saying hi from India. Hello out to India. Someone's saying based love. What I'm doing, it's the future. Thank you. I hope when people say the term based, I hope they are remembering the originator of that term, Lil B, the based god, who came from my city, Berkeley. Lil B, the based god, takes a little while to get used to because a lot of his music is wild freestyles. They can both be mildly inappropriate and just be him ranting about random topics sometimes. But he is a brilliant, interesting thinker, hilarious, awesome, interesting guy. I would love to work with him in some way someday because he comes from Berkeley like me. I saw him live once. He put on an awesome show. And he is just a very interesting, creative, different type of person out there. So when people say based, remember Lil B, the based god, as the originator of that term. And so shout out Lil B. Um, someone's asking favorite math and science books. Many, yes. I'll name just a few of my favorite math books. One of my favorites that hooked me on reading at a young age was called What is the Name of This Book by Raymond Smullyan, full of math and logic puzzles. And I love all of his works. They combine logic and other math topics in little anecdotes and jokes and fantastical stories. And so that book really changed my life in terms of showing me so many aspects. Oh, check out a squirrel back there. So many aspects of propositional logic encoded in fun games and things. And then that book kind of goes off the deep end toward Gödel's incompleteness theorem, which as a kid I didn't understand. So it took years later for me to go back and revisit that book to know all of its nooks and crannies and depths. And some of my more modern favorites include The Book of Numbers by John Conway and Richard Guy. That is a beautiful look at some of the simpler number theory topics in a somewhat digestible way. I really like a book by Matt Parker, who runs the Stand Up Maths channel on YouTube, called Things to Make and Do in the Fourth Dimension. That's a great, fun, digestible book as well. I really like the author Clifford Pickover. One great book from him is Wonders of Numbers. And those would be a few of my favorites, as well as anything written by Martin Gardner. I just have a massive collection of his stuff. He has compiled some of the most fun recreational math over the years during his life. Someone's asked my thoughts on Ramanujan. You're going to have to sometime rewatch earlier in the stream. I already gave a little rant about how I love Ramanujan. I think he's come up twice already. He was a brilliant, interesting thinker. And I think he represents a little bit about combo class, because I think that there are some interesting ways you could analyze the ways in which his non-standard education, where he did not get formal training in any normal math fields. He came from a very poor, impoverished background and did all of his thinking practically in his own investigations, having to prove to himself a lot of the axioms or postulates or theorems we take for granted. And I think that may be related to why he stumbled upon such greatness, to why he came across weird ways of thinking about numbers that were so ahead of their time that many people didn't even believe they were real or had any application or meant anything. They looked like nonsense to some. And G.H. Hardy, a mathematician, recognized them and brought Ramanujan into the world of other mathematicians. But nowadays, we know that pretty much everything he wrote was brilliant, even though at the time, if you had looked at it, it may have looked like nonsense. It was so ahead of its time. And I think some of it may have been related to him getting a very different and non-standardized education. Not that I recommend not going to a typical school or anything. It's most cases of brilliant mathematicians were formally trained. He was an exception, but a very interesting exception. Someone's really been loving the shorts here. Thank you. Someone's asking about a movie about Ramanujan. I haven't seen that. I don't know. I've just read a lot about him, but there are some films made about him. Would be interesting for me to check those at some point. Let's see if we got any other questions. We got some other really nice comments. So thanks to everyone here. Someone's saying the squirrel wants some knowledge. Yeah, we get some wild squirrels and all sorts of animals around here in the yard. The squirrels, I realized, they sometimes eat guavas and figs from my yard, but they don't take the tree bare. They don't eat everything off it like some people get pestered by squirrels. And I realized that must mean these squirrels have the choice to eat figs and guavas, and by choice, they're only sometimes doing it. They'll wander by the tree, take a little bite, be like, nah, I'm good for now. Those squirrels live a life of luxury, probably. They must be wandering around in just some buffet of different fruit trees and snacks to munch on if they're just passing by figs and guavas and just being like, I'll eat those tomorrow. I'm good today. So we get those. We also get possums, who I'm actually a fan of. They look a little spooky when they startle you in the night, but they're very nice. They're not going to do anything to you. Then you get raccoons, who I'm not as big of a fan of. They, on my tier list for animals, here's where we're going. We're going S tier, my cats. A tier, most of the other stuff in the yard. B tier, the squirrels. And possums, I'm going to put in A tier. I kind of like the possums. The squirrels cause a little more chaos than the possums. Squirrels are B tier. C tier would be like spiders. D tier is going to be the raccoons. And partially that's because I have friends whose animals have gotten hurt by raccoons before. Raccoons can just be punks. They've never hurt my cats. My cats stand their ground and are strong against them, but the raccoons can be little punks. I don't know. So they cause more trouble than most animals. I'm putting them at a D tier. And I'm putting at a D minus tier the skunks. There were skunks that come by sometimes, and they like to just chill on the porch when they come by. And then it's like, what am I supposed to do? I have a friend coming over. How do I get this skunk out of the way? I gotta like call people or tell them, watch out, there's a skunk in the way. Come in the back door. I can't move the skunk because if I like try and scare it, it'll spray me. And if I don't do anything, it's just standing there. So the skunks and the raccoons are the lower tiers, of my opinion, of yard creatures. Squirrel's pretty cool. Someone's asking if there's any math books that would fit in an audiobook format. Let me think. I actually don't know which ones they've made audiobook formats of. I think the Matt Parker one might work decent for that. They're all the ones I mentioned have at least some diagrams in them that make them a little harder. The Smulyan ones and the Martin Gardner might be good. Raymond Smulyan and Martin Gardner, they have a lot of written stuff. And the Matt Parker ones might be good as well in terms of having less necessary diagrams. Someone asks about the Threven project. And there are multiple Threven projects. The big quest is to get it in a dictionary or into like more standardized dictionaries, get the word Threven. So I haven't made a petition yet because I'm waiting for the right time. Once I have this channel a little bigger, more content out about it and stuff. So there's multiple Threven projects. The Threven book I'm writing is going really awesome right now, not because I'm close to finishing it, but because when I was doing this pond forest investigation I mentioned earlier of a sequence I was messing around with it, I don't want to say I invented, it's hard not to use that term, but a sequence I was discovering myself that may or may not have been discovered by others before, but I couldn't find it online. So for all I know, I'm the first to stumble into this type of weird sequence. Threvens showed up randomly in it. So I have a new thing to include in the Threven book. So that's good, even though I have a long way to go on finishing it. So I might publish some finished chapters of little Threven things online at some point first. And I also want to make Threven episodes. So I haven't filmed a full Threven YouTube episode on the full channel yet. That'll have to come soon. But before long, one of my next couple episodes that I'm going to film, if not the next one or I film before long, I will be filming one with a few facts about, Threvens are going to come up in a bunch. So there's going to be one that kind of introduces Threvens in just a big scale. Let's go down into the Threven rabbit hole for a minute. There's going to be another time they show up related to Sierpinski's triangle. There's going to be another time they show up related to pure powers of three, which show up in a lot of cool puzzles. So Threvens will show up in a lot of YouTube videos, and then I'm going to hopefully get my book closer to ready and make a petition and such So everyone stay tuned, stack up your Threven love, and start just spreading the word. Just start using the word Threven in more daily life. So someone asked my other interests apart from math. Um, let's see. I really like music. I like making and listening to hip hop music and sometimes other genres like rock or funk or all sorts of stuff. I like nature, so I like going on hikes when I'm able to, although I just recovered from a surgery, so I haven't gone on a long one yet this year. Yet, I will soon. And I like hanging out with my friends and laughing, playing games with my friends, or just spending time. I like watching YouTube videos or sometimes cartoons or comedy shows online. Um, I have a variety of weird hobbies. A lot of them end up being math like. Like, I like inventing my own types of board game or card game. That's a little math like. I have a lot of writing hobbies. I have a billion writing projects. I'm brainstorming, not just the video brainstorm topics, but fiction books I'm writing, math books I'm writing, and all sorts of stuff. So, writing is a huge hobby of mine. Creating fictional worlds in my head and tumbling down that rabbit hole I like. So, I would say that some of my core loves are numbers, nature, music, animals, books, and I spend a lot of time watching YouTube videos as well. Um, Someone said they had a squirrel in their kitchen for 3 days and nights, and they're nuclear powered little psychopaths. Yes, they can be. If there was one in my house, I bet it would be tweaking out and going wild. Man, those things have energy. There was like a cursed one in my yard the other day that was making these weird noises. I don't know what's up with those little guys. I don't mind them. I put them in B tier. They're pretty cool. But yeah, if it was in my kitchen, man, oh. Someone says they had to fight a raccoon, fist fight a raccoon when it attacked them in the house. Yeah. Jeez. Man, yeah. If a raccoon comes into my house, I'm putting my fists up. Those things are big enough to cause some damage. When the raccoons go in my yard and I want to get them out of the way, I'll be like, go, and stomp my foot and clap, and they won't go. And then I'll like yell and stomp my foot really loud, and they won't go. And I'll like bellow nearly as loud as I can and like clap and roar. And then the raccoon goes like, all right, fine, I'll get out of here. And I'm like, oh my God, it took like 80% of my max volume and clapping ability to get this guy out of here. I nearly had to use fists if it came down to it. So, someone's saying about the Millennium Prize Problems. Yeah. Someone's saying they're saving up to buy any book I decide to publish. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm really looking forward to writing more because I spend a huge amount of time writing in that I have a lot of head starts on books and I just spend so much time doing it during the day that I imagine at some point in my life, hopefully getting into a flow where I'm dropping a book every year or two between some fiction ones and some math ones. Um, but we'll see what fits in with all my videos and all of my other projects. All of it is sort of combo class-ish, sort of the math books will have a pretty similar vibe to my videos, I think. Although go a little deeper into some topics that I wasn't able to go that deep in a video. And the fiction ones will be wild. Like I may have mentioned, I'm not sure if I mentioned this last time. The first fiction book I'm trying to finish, which isn't the oldest scale one I've been working on, but is a newer one I've been working on for a year or two, which makes me less perfectionist about it, that I'm hoping to finish, is a book about a multi-dimensional prank war. So that fiction one involves a lot of math in it too. I snuck attack a lot of math in there. So kind of secretly comes from my Demotro combo class teacher angle accidentally, where when I'm writing books, I want to put a lot of math in it. And then I'm like, better disguise it in fun plot so that it's digestible to people who don't like math. And then I'm like, okay, I kind of combo classed the book up by sneak attacking people with math. Cool. So hopefully accidentally, some people will get tricked into liking math who haven't even seen my videos if they just pick up a fiction book someday and they think they're just reading about a multi-dimensional prank war and all of a sudden they understand prime numbers and irrationals now and other things. Now, about the Millennium Prize Problems. Yeah, super interesting. For those unfamiliar, there are some problems so sought after in math they have prizes on them. And one organization in the year 2000 picked 7 problems that they put a $1 million bounty on each of. They wrote a problem statement of what they expected an answer to hold, how detailed, and what an answer had to provide to any of these problems. Some of them being as simple as verifying something, and some being slightly vaguer in terms of what was expected. And for each of these, if you were to solve the problem and present it, and it is still the case for any of these 7 problems, apart from one I'll mention in a moment, that if you solve them, you are awarded $1 million. Now, don't get your hopes up that if you study math and just spend your life pursuing one, this is like pursuing the lottery. It is probably, or I mean, it would be like that. It would probably be like playing the lottery, because which means don't try and dedicate your life to one of these problems expecting the money. The person who solves these is going to be someone who didn't care about the money, who was just obsessed with math, because these things are very hard problems that anyone who goes, oh, I spent a year on it because I thought I wanted the $1 million, here's my proof, probably has a wrong proof. There's probably an error in it somewhere, an oversimplification. These are such hard problems that if you were to solve it, let me put it this way. If I were to solve one of the Millennium Prize problems, at least if I were to solve my favorite one of them, the Riemann Prize hypothesis, I would be more happy about the fact that my name was going down in a history book as the one who solved that problem than I'd be about the $1 million. If I could pick one of the two, I get to solve the problem or I get to have $1 million, I would solve it. At least for the Riemann hypothesis, one that is extra special to me. And so these are the type of problem that don't go after them for the money. They're very hard. Now, one of them has been solved, and it was by somebody who is an example of what I'm describing. A pure math head, loved the math. In fact, kind of reminds me of myself, not in terms of my depth of ability. I highly doubt I will ever solve one of these problems. My goal is to inspire someone else who someday solves one. I don't think I'm going to solve one of these. Maybe I'll inspire someone else to have a new idea. Maybe I'll throw out a seed of an idea that helps someone. That was the seed to help. Who knows? But I'm not going to probably be the guy to solve one of these Millennium problems because they are insane. Now, the guy who solved one, the reason he reminded me of myself is that he kind of hated institutions. He didn't think that the way schooling was done was correct or academia was in general. He ended up, after solving it, getting into a little conflict with the people presenting the prize and deciding to say, you know what? Screw this. I don't want to deal with whatever little conflict there is here with your academic, sophisticated people at some organization who think you're all that thingy. I figured out the problem. If my results continue to be verified as no glitches in them, I've gone down in history for what I need to. Keep your goddamn $1 million. I'm going off. I'm working on my own things. And he didn't take the $1 million. And people haven't heard from him in a long time. The last time that I heard anyone tried to reach out to him for a comment, he said, leave me alone. I'm busy picking mushrooms. And he lives a secluded life somewhere. We have no idea if he's working on cracking another vast problem or if he has other hobbies. But he didn't want to be part of the what he thought was a stuck-up culture in academics. And I can relate. I don't want to hang around people who think they're better because they have some degree or because they run some institution. I want to hang around with people who are interested in cool things. So that guy, Cedric Villa, or no, that was the other guy I was looking at. Who Grigory Perelman was the one. Let me make sure I'm getting that right on Google. Yeah. Yes, Grigory Perelman, however you pronounce that, was the name of the dude who solved it, the Poincare conjecture. And it was this thing about homeomorphism on spheres and other dimensions and stuff. And so basically a little hard to describe. A lot of the Millennium Problems, it's hard to even describe them. In fact, I have a whole book that basically aims to just describe the problems. That's I haven't read that book fully yet. I know them mostly from other places. Um, and so one of them has been solved and the prize was refused, and they had to put the money to some other charitable thing. And apart from that one, there are 6 others. And I do want to make videos describing them all at some point, but I need to research some of them more. To name them off the top of my head, let me see if I can remember them all. There was the like Poincare, I might be mispronouncing some of them. The Poincare conjecture, the Birch and Swinnerton Dyer something, the P equals NP problem, the Riemann hypothesis, the Hodge conjecture. Did I mention that one? I forget. The what other ones were on that list? The Yang-Mills and the Navier-Stokes. So those are 7 highly sought after insane problems that it's hard to even describe what the question is. Now, I don't know if I have time to go into it this stream or not. Maybe I will in a minute. But the one I'm most equipped to explain to you guys currently, that I feel like I know at not such a deep level to try and solve it myself, but a deep enough level to teach about it a bit, is the Riemann hypothesis. Well, a lot of mathematicians have that as their favorite because it relates to prime numbers. It's one of the ones out of all of them that is a very clear question they're trying to answer that's somewhat easy to explain once you have enough time to go into the details. And there's a lot of beauty to it. It relates to harmonic numbers as well, the series that goes like 1/1 plus 1/2 plus 1/3, and etc. And a lot of beautiful aspects of math are tied into this Riemann zeta function that's behind the Riemann hypothesis. To say what the question of the Riemann hypothesis is, which I'll see if I have time to explain what this means in the stream or not. But what the question of it is on this function called the Riemann zeta function, on its analytic continuation, when you graph the Riemann zeta on the complex plane, meaning this zeta function graphed on what's called the complex plane, and on part of it where it doesn't make sense as much, you have to use analytic continuation on this function. And I'll see if I can get into today on exactly what all these terms mean, because it's kind of fun and interesting, and out of all the problems, somewhat understandable. But for now, I'll just say what the question is that in the analytic continuation of the Riemann zeta function on the complex plane, are all of these zeros of this function that aren't on negative even integers are all the other ones on the line 1/2 plus some amount of I. So that might sound like nonsense if you haven't heard that problem itself before, even if you know a lot of math. If you haven't happened to study that, any of the concepts in that exact field, that might have like 4 words that don't make sense. But basically, there's this really interesting function that I'll go more later into how you would do like an analytic continuation of something. But there's a really interesting function that gets divergent toward infinity on a certain zone. And if in that zone you instead continue the lines using analytic continuation to find when are they going to hit 0 at weird spots, when do they pass the 0, the times where they spiral back and hit 0 happen predictably at every negative even integer. And if you look at positive even integers of this same function, you get this interesting pattern involving pi. And all the other ones seem to be on this weird line that they call the critical line, and it's in the critical strip. And in fact, while I chat, I'm going to draw a picture of this because it's a kind of cool visual. Like, even if you don't understand what these things are going to mean, if you just like trust that it's something important in math, it's a pretty cool picture. So let's see what else. That was my sidetracked rant about the Millennium Prize problems. Basically, they will definitely show up in videos In fact, I can imagine making a video about each one at some point, but I don't know enough about most of them to make whole videos about them yet. They don't even really fit in 1 minute videos anyway. They'll be more of main channel video topics. But maybe I'll make short videos just like trying to say the problem statement in a minute would be hard enough for a lot of them. Like explain the question in a minute would practically be hard enough for a lot of these. But then to explain the question and talk about some of the progress and some interesting facts about it and stuff, those would be in full YouTube episodes that I expect that we'll probably see the Riemann zeta function appear on the main channel in a few months, and we'll probably see the others appear a lot further down the line. Now, while I draw this Riemann zeta function stuff, we can look at some more comments. This might have a lot of glare for right now. I'll put it at a better angle in a minute, and it's going to be a very sloppy picture anyway. So, let's see what some people are wondering. What they said about their book reminds me of them of Flatland. Yeah, Flatland's even a bit more directly mathematical than my book. My book has also some ways in which I try and make it more of a comedy, fun to go along, like a comedic drama thing as well. So it's a little more real worldy, although it gets absurdist at times too in my book. But Flatland is an awesome book. I love Flatland. That's one of my favorites, and that's always going to be an inspiration in terms of ways in which you could present a mathematical concept within a fantastical story. Someone else asked if I have a favorite math pun. One that I kind of like is how there's a overused one that's like there are there are that many. Also, can you guys confirm if that says 10 the right direction? Because I always get confused at how to me it doesn't look right, but I think my camera flips it. So if someone comment 10 or 01, depending on what they see. But so correct, cool. So if an overused pun that some people say is there are that many people in the world, those who know binary and those who don't. And that's pretty clever, but I've heard it be overused. So what I like more is there are that many people in the world, those who know binary, those who don't, and those who know that this was actually a joke about base 3. And it still works because then now that many people were correct, that this described all 3 of the people. 3 types of people. And there's some other funny variations on that you can come up with. Apart from that, I don't know. There are some good math puns. A lot of good ones to be had out there. I don't put as many puns in my videos or my books or stuff like that because I find them to be more like a temporary linguistic thing that wouldn't translate as well and might not last the test of time as well. And I like my content. It sounds weird, but like how some people want their stuff to still be applicable in the future, I also want my stuff to still be interesting and applicable to aliens who have to translate it. If aliens ever come by in a billion years after humans are dead and my stuff maybe gets digged up someday because they realize I was one of the people talking about base 6 that they use, whatever. In any case, I want my stuff to be understandable more by aliens, so I don't put as many puns in my books because they would have to translate it and be like, that was only funny because they happen to have this in English. With that said, I use a lot of puns in a day-to-day basis with my friends, so I do like them. Someone else here is asking if math was discovered or invented. That's a really long discussion, so I'm just going to say really quickly that I think more so math was discovered, but I think we did invent a lot of structures to use around it. And we invented decisions of how to make things work that tap into something fundamental, which is the part of me that say more discovered. But I think there's a lot of invention going on in math still. Within invention, there can be discovery. They can interlink, and it's something we can never really prove about math or otherwise, like what anything really has to do with like the core of the universe. What does this tell us about what's really going on? We don't really know that about philosophy or science that much either. So with math, think it's in that full category of life's pretty baffling. Who knows what actually tells us what about the fundamental inner workings of whatever universe or whatever. But I'm leaning toward that there is math underlying the universe in some ways. Someone asked what I think of Dr. Stone, the anime, and I don't know it. I don't consume much anime, actually. I watch a bunch of cartoons, honestly, but I'm a really big fan, for one, of old school cartoons, like really old Looney Tunes and like the Fleischer Bros animation and certain old, like, original time animations that would make like 7 minute hand drawn animations from back in the day. But I also really like some modern animated shows, but they're more like Western animation and stuff. I really liked, even though these may be more like kids' shows to some people, I really am a fan of Adventure Time and Regular Show, and Gravity Falls was great, and Rick and Morty is good. And there's a lot of classic shows out there. But I do like more random stuff. I don't spend as much time on that. I watch more YouTube, but I haven't watched much anime much at all. Avatar: The Last Airbender was great, by the way. Um, Let me show this Remon stuff. I've already kind of explained a few times that I don't fully have a math degree. I took an unconventional path. I did more of my learning from books and online articles over many years. And I just love studying as a personal passion. So that's more where it comes from. But I've taken a bunch of classes, but I don't have, I mean, I have like a 2 year degree from college, but I didn't like officially study math. And I went on my own weird path. Here's my little picture of a complex plane, because I wanted to draw a little picture of this critical strip for the Riemann zeta, which is, imagine this direction tells me how many ones I got. There's my negative direction. And imagine that this upper direction, oh, we got a lot of glare there. Close enough. Imagine that this direction tells me how many eyes I got. 2i, 3i, etc. Negative I, negative 2i. So this is the complex plane where a lot of fun action goes. This is where the Mandelbrot set lives. This is where Euler's identity of e to the I pi plus 1 equals 0 is easiest to understand. This is where we can break certain primes into secretly being factorized by what's known as Gaussian integers, and others we can't. This is where a lot of cool stuff goes on. Now, what we're looking at right here is the Riemann zeta function, and it's too hard to draw because if I put in a two-dimensional thing for my input, I need a two-dimensional output. So there's too many dimensions going on for me to be able to draw an input and an output properly in the way you're used to for a graph. So we're just going to show a zone of certain things. We're just going to show that first we're going to draw some dots. What's going on these dots? Well, how about these dots right here? This dot's 1. Turns out when you plug in 1 into the Riemann zeta, it is just the edge of where things stop making sense. This is where the harmonic series lives, 1 plus 1/2 plus 1/3 plus 1/4, and etc. Because the Riemann zeta function tells us to take 1 over s to the I'm flip these. 1 over 1 to the s plus 1 over 2 to the s plus 1 over 3 to the s plus etc. forever. Now, let me try and block the light here. If we have 1 to the s plus 2 to the s plus 3 to the s going forever, depending what we plug in here, if I plug in something bigger than 1, it actually converges to a finite value. It doesn't spiral to infinitely big. It gets smaller and smaller at a rate where it converges. Now, on the multiples of 2 up here, the thing it converges to involves the number pi, and it's super cool. If I plug in 2 right there, I get 1 over the square numbers, if 2 is my s, and 1 over the square numbers slowly converges to pi squared over 6. Super weird. Euler found that back in the day. It's known as the Basel problem, and it's really just part of the whole Riemann zeta story because it's plugging 2 to that thing. Now, the next level is saying, what if I plug in complex values? So my S is like 2 plus I. So that I don't have time to explain in this stream what that means, but it makes it go crazy. Now, even with all that going on, I can't really cross this line. If I try and put something smaller than 1 up there, this goes too big. It goes to infinity. So what you have to do is that analytic continuation thing I mentioned where they're kind of like tracking the slopes. They're like, okay, based on this curve, I'm like keeping its slope going the way it's supposed to go with its derivatives. So there's this analytic continuation thing they're doing. And they're like, which points when they're analytically continued send us to 0 are called zeros of the function, where this technically says it approaches 0 weirdly enough because of the weird thing complex numbers can do. Now, the negative numbers, negative integers that are powers of 2. Oh, no, not powers of 2, just even ones, multiples of 2. The negative even ones are zeros. And that's a little weird, but it happens infinitely when you take the analytic continuation. And so they call those trivial zeros. And there are other zeros, and all the other zeros that we've found live on this line that is 1/2 for the amount of real number and some amount of I. And they've proven a few things. They've proven that every zero, apart from the ones that are at -2, is in this critical strip, is in between 0 and 1 for its real component and some amount of I. And they think they might all be on this line that's 1/2, exactly on that line. But that's the part they haven't proven, and if you prove that, you get $1 million. Because it turns out that not only is this a really cool function to play around with, but it has a deep relation to prime numbers. And if we were to confirm the Riemann hypothesis that all the non-trivial zeros are on that line, known as the critical line within the critical strip, then it would tell us a lot of things about prime numbers and our expectations of how many of them there are in certain places. It would confirm a lot of possible expectations that we're thinking might be true, but we're not sure. Now, let's see here. Fern from Adventure Time is a sad story. There's sad and happy and all of that. I think Adventure Time has a lot about embracing the mood of sad and happy. It also has things about cycles and about as things have to pass and come around and leave, things come back around and grow. And the whole show relates to an almost planetary version of that, as there are ice ages and comets that wipe things out and things have to regrow. And I think that's one of the beautiful things there, because a lot of things in life come in cycles where projects all have, or friends all have, or things will sometimes seem like they've died, and maybe that's just the winter time, and maybe you'll come back for another springtime and another summertime. So, and you don't always get another summertime for everything, so you got to appreciate things while you have them. But often things do go in cycles of some form or another, and there will be some form of growth after each form of the opposite. Now, a couple comments being pro-Gravity Falls. Yes, I recommend it to someone who said that they're wondering if they should watch it. Now, it is somewhat like a kid's show to a degree. However, the underlying mysteries are super cool, and the way that little mysterious clues that end up having importance and symbols that have importance that you can kind of spot foreshadowings and things in places are super interesting and well done. Also, I just like the vibe of the slight occultness and the forestiness. And let's see. There's some New Jersey comments, and I love having people share where they're from. Always having fans from all over the globe, like I said, is pretty awesome. We get to chat through this little screen. Couldn't do that back in the day. Now it's for better or for worse, and I'm not actually someone who loves all technology, and there are parts of me that wishes I grew up before the internet or before even electricity, and I think I would have liked my life better. But there are other parts of me that know that I'm going to be able to spread my ideas to more folks because of the internet. So we got a comment here saying someone like me would be what we need for Riemann. Some anonymous maniac should fund my endeavor. For the Riemann hypothesis, if anyone wants to fund me, I will say for enough funding, I would dedicate hours each day to coming up with ideas of how to tackle the problem, but I wouldn't still be able to apply all of them. Analytic continuation is very tricky. So I'm the guy to inspire the masses, maybe to solve the Riemann, if that's what you mean. Um, Highly doubt I will solve it myself. You never know because I fiddle around with numbers all the time. Maybe someday I will crack a really cool thing. But I think it's less likely that I will be the guy to prove something than that I will have some cool seeds I find that turn out to have big applications or maybe be ahead of their time or whatever. One of the ones I'm working on that I called my pond forest sequence, I'm extra excited about right now. Someone's mentioning the Mandelbrot set's awesome and the Feigenbaum constant are awesome. Yeah, I almost mentioned that one. That I was like, that was almost one I mentioned in. It would be in the A tier probably, or maybe B tier because there's so many constants, but probably A tier constant. But couldn't quite get on my S tier of constants. And the Mandelbrot set's awesome. I want to do more videos about it because the Mandelbrot set is a really, really simple thing here. Pretend I still have my complex plane here without my Riemann zeta craziness. So getting rid of my critical strip and my critical line and my pi squared over 6, getting rid of my reciprocals of square numbers. But I'm leaving my complex numbers right here. Leaving, we got how many ones and we got how many i's going on that axis. Now, what the Mandelbrot set asks, kind of, for those who don't know, is we're looking at this thing z squared plus c, and you uh it's hard to explain because the part of it that's hard to explain is when we take a complex number like 2 plus I and square it, we're not used to as much um doing all sorts of exponentiation like that. But essentially it's if you trust that you're able to fiddle with complex numbers in the right way and you keep squaring them and adding a constant, then depending on what your starting seed is for your C, you're going to have, let me, I'm trying to pull up a little picture right here so I'll be able to try and draw part of it. So, where is it on the actual axis? What we're doing here is we're looking at if I plug in a point and that point is my C because we're starting with, if I take C and I go Z squared plus C, we go there. The first squared was, or we could consider it plugging in 0 as my first iteration, and then the C appears. I'm not describing this right, but the points that we choose to iterate as our constant, some of them, if I keep squaring them and adding themselves, will fly off toward infinity. Others will remain bounded and not go toward infinity. And let's look at the shape of the ones that don't go toward infinity. I'm not going to draw it exactly right nearly, but it's at first, if you zoomed in, it would be like something like this, like all the area in here. And then, and at first, they thought there was like printing errors or something when they were investigating this and didn't have as good printers back in the day because they didn't have as high quality computers when this was being investigated in, I think, the 80s or so. And then if you zoom in, you're like, wait, there's little spikes here, little spikes here, little spikes. Whoa, there's more little spikes. And as you zoom in, it gets more and more detailed. And if you apply coloration rules to say, how fast do the divergent points fly? Oh, do the divergent points fly off toward infinity? And you tell them, like, go this dark of red if you go toward infinity that fast, or that dark of red if you go that fast, or whatever. You get really beautiful patterns you can zoom into. You can color as well. And it is a classic fractal. I didn't describe it right. Stay tuned for when I put it in a full episode. But the Mandelbrot set is really a thing of beauty and really one of my examples of how The complex numbers are probably something that will show more fun applications in the future as we go forward, and something that like we hadn't been messing around with until the last 50 years. I mean, complex numbers were used before that, but referring to the Mandelbrot set. And already we've found so many fun ways to experiment with the Mandelbrot set. So we'll see how it goes going forward. Um, Keep it up and like the style. Thank you for the comment. And someone else is saying my sequence is integer based to plug it into the OEIS. Believe me, I have. The OEIS is one of my favorite websites of all time, the online encyclopedia of integer sequences, where you can plug in numbers from a sequence you're curious about, and will tell you what sequence that might be part of if it's on there. And the thing is my sequence is you take a starting sequence with a certain rule applied to it, and it generates a whole forest of sequences, kind of a whole web of sequences. However, I have searched certain just like second and third rows of it, which would be sequences. You could see it as a row of sequences that make up a forest. And when I searched the second or third rows, I didn't find anything on the OEIS. So I don't know if anyone has investigated the thing I'm looking at that much. I found something mildly similar when I was trying to peek through the OEIS, and that's a great resource for helping me try and find if this has been played with yet. And I found somebody using something that reminded me of mine, but it wasn't the same concept. And so the OEIS didn't bring anything up, but great suggestion to anyone out there who likes math and numbers. Gotta check out the OEIS. Very text-based, old-fashioned looking website, but incredibly handy, and is on my list of my top 5 or 10 websites of all time. Let's see. Someone's saying complex math. Can I go back to 8th grade to help learn computation because you don't understand you have a test on it? Well, if you ask me one particular question in the chat that you're having trouble with, maybe I can help you out. That's a little vague there. So tell me a particular question if you want, and I'll see if I have time to go into that at all. And someone says that's promising. I didn't find anything. Yep, it was kind of hard to tell because it wasn't necessarily the type of sequence that necessarily would have been in there, because it was more of seeing what happens when you iterate a sequence, and a way of iterating a sequence. And so pretty promising. I think it's pretty interesting, the thing I'm finding, but really I don't care if someone's already found it. I almost was hoping at first someone else had found it just because I was eager to figure out what it was. Now it's exciting to think maybe someone else hasn't found it, although now it means I need to work with some more computer programmers. If there's any computer programmers out there, remember to get in touch with me at combouniversity@gmail.com to help me crunch some numbers for various sequences, because I have a couple of people I work with like that. But it's always good to have other people to chat with when I want to crunch some sequence numbers and see where things go next. And on this one, I calculated a lot of my pond forest late at night by hand. And there are many of them that I need to run through something like Python, which I don't know myself. I've always relied on friends for more computery sides of things, whereas I've been busy kind of script writing and reading and stuff, and set designing my weird zone. So I haven't learned the way to program that myself yet. Feel free to reach out if any of you know how to. And before long, I'll test bigger forests, and I'll probably be using something along the lines of the app Python. Someone asked me how long it takes me to film a short. Well, it's hard to say if you count how long I've like studied and prepared for learning it. So there's no whole preparation time if you count having come across the idea and having figured out how I want to present the idea. That could take any number of amount of time. Could be embedded over many small amounts of time adding up too. But as far as actually filming it, I would say usually set up the set for like 3 minutes, make sure the clocks are visible, and throw my lab coat on if it's not already on often. And then I get somewhere from 1 to 10 takes of it maybe. Sometimes I film it on the first take, sometimes it takes a few. Sometimes if it's one that barely fits in a minute, then probably the first couple takes, it took me a minute and a half, and then I try and condense it into a minute just for the, half for the algorithm and half because I like the challenge of condensing my thoughts, like I'm trying to make a poem shorter, to be like brevity is wit or whatever. Sometimes it helps to actually force myself to shave off unnecessary words or bits of a diagram. And so trying to fit it in a minute sometimes takes longer if it's the ones that's really close to a minute. But I would say overall, the short filming itself probably takes about between 10 minutes and 20 minutes for the short. Not that long. Do a couple takes of it, set it up, make sure all my clocks are showing. Sometimes takes a couple more takes if it's harder to like whip out the whiteboards right, or if I'm dropping whiteboards or something goes wrong. Or sometimes takes a little longer to set up something on the table and make it not fall or whatever. So maybe like 10 minutes to half an hour to do a short. Then it takes me a little time to decide like trimming it and titling it and tagging it for YouTube shorts as well as TikTok. So the process of making each short each day probably takes an hour or a little more, but that doesn't count any of the time where I came across the idea, because that time is kind of hard to count. It's a lot of my shorts are topics I've read about multiple places and slowly gotten more and more comfortable with the concepts of, and then at some point figured out a really cool place they popped up that I wanted to show people. Um, so I did this all outside. Theoretically, in the future, I could plug in my computer out here. There is an outlet, but I didn't bring a power adapter. So I have 10% battery now. So just a warning that this stream's not going to last forever. I'm actually having a fine time out here just chatting with you guys. Could do this for a while longer, but I'm going to cut it off when my battery starts saying it's at like 4 or 5%. So just a little warning to you guys. So let's see. Kind of lost that, distracted me from whatever I was talking about. So I'm going to go back to the comments. Sorry if I left any thoughts hanging. Oh yeah, I guess I was just answering like how long it takes to make a short. Um, so yeah, it doesn't count the time where I learned a topic, but the short itself, filming and editing, may take an hour or so. YouTube episodes take a while longer, but I have fun doing them, so it's something I really look forward to, is the afternoons where I'm filming a whole YouTube one. Let's see what else people are asking around here. Someone's saying they're a software developer, mostly do web apps, probably not the right fit for number crunching. Well, Florian, if you still want to reach out, I'm still interested in chatting. In the future, I may design web apps as well. I have plenty of ideas I want to fiddle around with. So as a reminder to anyone who wants to reach out, the one you can reach out to me at. And like I said, the main things I would be interested in chatting with are people who have some sort of computer-based skill that they'd want to help me work on something number-based or combo class-based with. People who have any type of editing experience, but or animating experience or whatever. But really anyone who wanted to just help me out in any way. There are plenty of things that if anyone wanted to help me try and teach others and make this channel spread its growth, plenty of help I could use. So feel free to reach out if anyone wants to contribute in some way to combouniversity@gmail.com. And that's also, if anyone forgets it or loses it, available on the YouTube channel itself. But you'll probably have to click one of those I'm not a little robot things they make you click. Luckily on YouTube, it's an easier I'm not a robot thing. It's not one of those ones where it's like, okay, if you can understand how to solve this Rubik's Cube underwater, then we know you're not a robot and we'll let you on the website. It's like, what? There's ones where it's like, try and identify which thing in this incredibly blurry picture of a massive city where every item is half on an edge and half not, which cells have a stop sign in them, or like a stoplight. And the stoplight, you're like, wait, are you talking about just the light or the whole box the light's on? Does it count if the edge is jutting in? No, I swear I'm not a robot. And speaking of robots, I just in case, put a slow mode on this one where people can't comment within 6 seconds of the last comment. Because last time, right at the end of my stream, some people started spamming some like, look at my channel, and some inappropriate words all over the chat. And they were spamming it like a million times. So I put a shortening thing on, but this time the robots didn't appear. So didn't even need the shortening time frame. But if anyone ever gets cut off from writing a comment, it'll only be 6 seconds for the robots. Python's intuitive and think I would enjoy. Someone said that's true. Someday I'm gonna have fun doing it, I'm sure. But really, I'm just like so much of not a computer whiz that right now I'm so busy that I'm dedicating my extra time to getting decent enough at editing to be able to edit full combo class episodes myself. And that's kind of like my computery task of the month. And then after that, I go old fashioned with my paper books and stuff again. I know certain technologies that I'm really good at, but they just relate to like filmmaking and music making and certain parts of like science equipment or whatever. Someone's asking for homework help, and I'm down for stuff like this, which is they're wondering about. It says, I don't know if that first A is part of it or not, but it says AB plus BC plus AC. I don't know if that first A is just the question letter or not. For A is 2, B is 5, and C is 3. I'm not fully sure what you mean there. If you mean they want you to multiply those little strings of number, they want you to go A times B plus B times C plus A times C, then you kind of just have to rewrite that little string of letters as parentheses. Each letter turns into a parenthesis around a number. So wherever there's an A, you replace it with parentheses around a 2. And wherever there's a B, you replace it with parentheses around a 5 and stuff. And then whenever you see two parentheses back to back, you're going to multiply them. So then the little AB at the front is going to crunch to a 10. The little BC, you multiply those two. So you're going to have three pairs of numbers to multiply together. And then lastly, you're going to add the three pairs. Because first you multiply AB and multiply BC and multiply AC, then you add them all. And that's assuming that the little a at the beginning isn't part of it. That's like the question number or something. Someone asked my opinion on PEMDAS. Some people lose their mind when people get it wrong. I think it's annoying when people get mad about like people not using math the same way. I don't care if somebody does stuff wrong. Everyone does stuff wrong. People are going to do stuff a little wrong. Who cares? The goal of communication should be to be understandable. PEMDAS is great for making things more understandable, so you have to use less parentheses, but really you want to just make your thing understandable. So sometimes I use extra parentheses that aren't necessary. You could use just PEMDAS and less parentheses, but I want the parentheses to make it extra clear. So whatever it takes to write something clearly is useful. I think people should do stuff in order, so they should follow PEMDAS, but I'm not going to get angry if anyone messes it up. Some people are a little too uptight in the math community. So yeah, people are going to mess that up, but it's good to have a default. You know, you need a default, so sometimes you use less parentheses. Someone's asking about AI if I know the Dolly 2. Yeah, that thing's insane. Okay, I got to wrap this up, guys. I'm at 5%. This thing's going to crash soon. How often do I stream? This is my second one ever on here, but I'm probably going to do it a bunch. I like chatting, probably a couple times a week. Probably will set up a schedule of like a couple days a week where I'll do it and let you guys know. For now, I will try and next time I do it, maybe I will schedule it on the channel like the night before or at least the day of, like some hours before. So maybe you can check my channel if you're curious, see if I have one scheduled. And I'll do them on the bonus channel here, but subscribe to the main combo class channel too for the full episodes. But I'm going to be streaming on the bonus one for now. So probably do it again in a couple days from now. I have fun doing it. I have a lot more to tell you guys. And let's see, a couple other random comments. Don't have time to get to soon. Um, do, 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 do. Yeah, if anyone wants to, someone mentioned the number crunching. Like I said, combouniversity at Gmail, if anyone wants to reach out, number crunching or otherwise. Someone hoped I'm having a great day, and I'm having a pretty good day, especially because it was fun chatting with all of you. And to anyone who happens to watch through this stream after the fact, too, I love you as well. All of my combo lords out there, especially you guys who are here right now, you are awesome. Hope you're all doing marvelous. I'll catch you guys again for some more videos soon. And make sure to subscribe to the main combo class channel too, because what I'm going to do soon is finish up my edit on my episode explaining why I have so many clocks.